House lawmakers got an earful last week as they heard from people on both sides of a bill to tighten caps on local property tax increases.
Property taxes have just gone up so much in Houston that I'm concerned that if it continues, I may not be able to stay in my house that I'm in.
Homeowners from around Texas came to the Capitol to testify in support of House Bill 2. That bill would put a 2.5% cap on annual property tax increases. The current cap is 8%. But city leaders from around the state worry that that cap would limit the ability of cities and counties to provide public safety services.
Working together and understanding what the people want from tax reform, but at the same time finding, again, we are looking for that balance to make sure that we can provide for the public safety.
The Senate's version of the property tax reform bill passed out of committee earlier this month and will head to the full Senate when the lieutenant governor calls for a vote. One senator in particular could have a big impact on how that bill moves forward. Politics reporter Phil Prazen spoke one-on-one with Amarillo Republican Kel Seliger. He's a bit of a maverick in the Senate.
Well, yeah, Josh, Senator Seliger from Amarillo is the only Republican senator to publicly come out against this property tax cap. Now, that's important because the author of the bill says he's short by 1 vote to pass it through the Senate. This isn't the first time Senator Seliger has bucked the Republican leadership, and he talked to me about that earlier this week.
One of the defining issues so far this legislative session has been the quest by Governor Greg Abbott, Speaker of the House Dennis Bonnen, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick to limit the growth of local property taxes. A Senate bill requiring an election for a local government growing more than 2.5% a year quickly passed the Senate committee despite overwhelming opposition from local elected leaders, fearing it would cut into public safety. But that effort is frozen. Amarillo Senator Kel Seliger is the only Republican senator publicly opposed.
To assume that property taxes are only important to certain members here because you adhere to a certain piece of legislation, nothing could be more false. There's a lot of different ways to get there. I happen to get there by listening to locally elected officials, and regardless of what people in this building think, some of the most capable and dedicated people in the state of Texas, certainly among elected officials, are the ones that we elect to City Hall and the county courthouse.
Seliger was the mayor of Amarillo before elected to the state Senate in 2004. His priorities haven't changed much, making sure West Texas gets its fair share of resources for roads, public schools, higher education, and mental health. Over the years, statewide politics have changed. State leaders more and more look to overrule cities and counties. Seliger often sides with the locals for things like property taxes, resources for public schools, ride-sharing regulations for companies like Uber and Lyft, and red light cameras.
And one of the things that we don't want to do in the Texas legislature, I think, is absolve people of the responsibility of going to vote for the people who represent you locally. It is the most responsive form of government to a very great extent. Locally, we have the government we deserve based by the people we vote for or the people we don't vote for.
You have to have 19 votes. When that's a partisan matter, you need all the Republicans, and there's only 19 of them. So that puts any given Republican in a position of saying, I'm for this or I'm against this. And given his situation, both ideologically and his, the tension between him and the lieutenant governor, that generally puts Seliger in the decision-making position about whether something's going to go or not.
That tension flared at the beginning of the session. Patrick did not reappoint Seliger to chair the powerful Higher Education Committee, putting him atop the Agriculture Committee instead.
I made those decisions based on a number of factors.
When Seliger spoke against that decision, Patrick's advisor, Sherry Sylvester, said they could appoint another person to Agriculture as well. And then Seliger said this on the radio.
And really unbecoming for a member of the staff, lieutenant governors or my staff. I didn't say anything of the sort, and that assertion is disingenuous. And I have a recommendation from Ms. Sylvester and her lips in my back end.
Calling that comment lewd, Patrick stripped him of that position as well. And now he's the only Republican without a leadership role.
What is to them just a bad relationship at the moment or a bad patch of road at the moment is in the way of state policy or of the things that you sent them both here to do.
Was that more on policy, or was that more of a personality thing?
Everything begins, I think, really on policy and largely policy. Just, once again, fundamental disagreements, And I'm always going to come down on the side of the people I represent, the people who sent me here.
Those people continue to send Seliger to Austin. In 2018, he defeated not one, but two opponents in the Republican primary. While political trends change across the state, Seliger remains.
Well, really, I'm sort of a Reagan small government person, called a localist. There's nothing new about me when it comes to a basic conservative philosophy, nothing.
As for property taxes, Senator Seliger has his own idea. Instead of capping the revenue local governments can collect, his bill caps the growth of your appraisal at 5% from last year. That, he says, will go further in relieving your burden while not putting new burdens on cities, counties, and school districts. Josh?
We've talked about Seliger being the maverick of the Senate. How's that going to play out for him with this?
Well, right now, his property tax bill doesn't have any co-authors. It's just filed. It hasn't been referred to committee. So it is going to be difficult. I mean, when you decide to buck so publicly the Republican leadership in the Senate, there's a cost to be paid.